Well, welcome everyone. This is Lois Frankel. Hi there. You're one of your congressmen here in South Florida, and today is we're having a very special event as part of our celebration of Black History Month. But it's actually more than that. It is the celebration here locally of a wonderful man who was a part of our lives here, Hank Aaron. And I want to welcome. We have some great guests, so we're gonna have a little conversation about him. But I want to first do a shout out and welcome uh, Billy Aaron. Hi, Billy. Billy's there on the Alan Tannenbaum link there. Billy, just a shout out to you. Hello, welcome. We love you. We Our hearts go out to you and your family. And just to let you know that you're always going to be part of our family, and we hope we'll see you back in West Palm Beach soon. Okay, I see there's Patrick getting on. Okay, hi. So listen, uh, I'm going to start off quickly, just give you my story with Hank, and then we're gonna shift around to some of these great guests we have here today. So one of the uh, greatest opportunities I had as a mayor here in West Palm Beach was to bring back to life, to revitalize some of our neighborhoods. And one of the neighborhoods, which was really the pride and joy of Ike Robinson, or one of our city commissioners, was a place called Coleman Park. And I'm going to let I'm going to let one of our guests talk about Coleman Park. But Coleman Park, uh, as you will learn, was the home of the Negro Baseball League. And so we had really some incredible baseball players who started their career there, and that included Hank Aaron. But it also is a place full of children. And so I spent a lot of time as mayor to try to bring back uh, the life of that neighborhood, to fix up dilapidated properties, to make sure that the community center there was healthy and alive. And that's how I got connected to Hank Aaron, because lo and behold, one day I found out that Hank Aaron had just moved literally steps away from me in the neighborhood I used to live in Presidential Estates. And I picked up the phone, spoke to Billy and then Hank, and said, "Hey, how about helping us uh, do some revitalization in that neighborhood?" And they were overjoyed and paid a visit to the park. And what do you know? We had a golf tournament to raise some money. But what really sticks out of my mind is before that golf tournament, Hank went out on one of the baseball fields with some youngsters and gave him some tips. But my experience was what a humble couple, what a generous couple, Billy and Hank. And you learn a little bit more about them. We used funds that they raised to the money went to the Boys and Girls Club here in town, and they use that for scholarships for kids to take music lessons and tennis lessons and so forth. Just one of the many ways that the Aarons have given back to the children, not only here in West Palm Beach, but all over the country. So with that said, we're going to start off. We got here, let's see, I see we got Richard Riles here today. Hi, Rich, I'm going to get to you. Richard's going to give some, oh, he's got some great experiences to talk about. He's a local lawyer. We have George Lindley here today, the executive director of the Palm Beach Sports Commission. Dan Calloway, well, he's a legend. He's a legend in himself. Dan Calloway, with his work with the youth here, and Howard Bryant, senior editor for ESPN. And then hopefully we're going to be joined by Patrick Franklin from the Urban League, and then our mayor, Keith James. Richard, I'm going to throw this over to you. You have some childhood experiences with Hank Aaron. Would you share them with us?
Sure. Um, I met Hank because he was kind of I guess, surrogate father for both two Atlanta Braves. Dusty Baker and Ralph Garr. If you remember, in the 70s, late 60s, the African American baseball players could not live in the team headquarters, which was the Ramada Inn up on Palm Beach Lakes, which is now Best Western across from the Outlet Mall. And so the African American players would live in the homes of African Americans here in the community. Mr. Calloway was instrumental in identifying homeowners who wouldn't mind renting a room or a couple of rooms out to various families. And Ralph Garr lived in my home. And so because of his relationship with Hank, and I lived over, if you know the area, I lived over off of Erie Place, just south of the baseball, where the baseball stadium was then. And Ralph used to walk to practice, and sometimes Hank would drive him home. But Ralph and his family stayed at my home. They were from Louisiana, and his wife was an excellent cook. And when they would go out and fish behind the stadium in Lake Mangonia, Clear Lake, they bring their catch back to the house, and we'd fry them up, and all the players would sit around and talk baseball, talk life. And I just was at the knee of those folks, and got an awesome opportunity to meet untold numbers of African American players. Because the way it was then, when a team was coming to town, the local players, the home team would set it out for the African American players who were coming in from other cities, so that they would know where and where they could and could not go. And most times, the players would end up at someone's home, and it would be just a roaring good time. And so I've met Hank at my house and at the stadium. He was always very kind and gentle man, but he had a presence that let me know that I needed to tread lightly. At least he made me feel that.
Richard, how old were you back then? How old were you?
I met them when I was 6 years old, and I am 58 now, so it's been 52 years. And Dusty and Ralph and I have maintained a relationship over that entire 52 years. In fact, I was at the Aaron home with Dusty just before the pandemic hit last March or late February. And we went to dinner. And again, it was the stories. And I just sat there almost, I'm 50. I was 57 then, but I was back at 6 years old again, just sitting there listening like a fly on the wall. And Hank was a great man that, just imparted wisdom with almost every word.
So, Rich, what is your greatest memory, or what do you take from your time with Hank Aaron?
The greatest memory was just his calm presence, his demeanor, his ability to move the room without saying a lot. He was a man of few words, but when he made a statement, it was profound and it had import. And I think that being a person of few words is lost these days. And he was a great man in that regard.
Thank you. Hey, Howard Bryant, you wrote a book about Hank Aaron, is that right?
It is true, yes.
Okay, so could you just, I know it's going to be hard to say, can you sum up his life, but give us some highlights that stand out as you wrote about him, some highlights about the man and his family.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on here. And I can't see you, Alan and Mrs. Aaron, but I also wanted to offer my condolences. I haven't had a chance to speak with Billy yet, simply because we always try to give everyone their space, but it's not for a lack of love or interest and thought. So thank you for having me here. And it's just, would obviously rather have it be under different circumstances. To me, I think that when I think about Henry Aaron, I think about there are so many different areas where you can go when you have a life that large. And Richard, I wish I had known and spoken to you so I could have taken some of your stories and put them in the book. And that's the one thing I take from this, is that when you deal with somebody like Henry, the reach is so wide over the course of a lifetime, and a lifetime such as his. And he really does represent the American century in terms of when you look at the scope of where he lived, how he lived, the people he touched. Though I'm listening to Richard right now, and I'm thinking about the years, and I'm thinking, okay, well, wait a minute. Dusty was a rookie in '68, which is the year I was born, and you were still looking for alternative housing? And that's a story I didn't know. I remember a lot of baseball. You would think that those stories, I remember Henry was saying that in Bradenton in '63, '64 with Milwaukee, they were still fighting for housing, but I didn't know that had extended into Atlanta into the early '70s. That is an incredible story there as well. I mean, I think that I was on the phone the other day speaking with someone about Henry's legacy, and I really do just say that there are very few people who are mirrors for the entire journey of the 20th century in this country. I mean, that is an enormous statement. And I don't like superlatives, but it really is true. And when people talk about his presence, and when they talk about his generosity and his gift, I always say that so much of what they're talking about, when they're talking about him, they're also talking about themselves. We're talking, he, more than anybody else to me in my life at least, provided a mirror for the way we've treated people, the way this country treated him, and the reaction that he had to that was an enormous evolution that also ended in so many different ways. It always sort of funneled back into helping other people.
Howard,
I just love that.
Howard, thank you for that insight. Because we are actually recording this and people are going to watch, some people may not even know about the achievements of Hank Aaron. Could you just take us back in history a little bit and just give some of the highlights?
Sure. Well, obviously, when you're looking at the scope, I mean, from a baseball standpoint, obviously, the numbers are incredible. 755 home runs, still is the all-time leader in total bases, still is the all-time leader in RBI, was the last active player to have played in the Negro Leagues when he retired in 1976. The longevity is unbelievable that he played, and we all know about guys getting hurt. We all know about the disabled list, although they don't call it the disabled list anymore. It's the injured list. That here's a man who played 24 seasons and never went on the injured list. He broke his ankle in his rookie season in 1954, but by then the season was just about over. So to be able to do what he did and to never get, it's not to say he didn't get hurt. He just played with he was so professional. He was lucky in a lot of ways, but to play that long and not miss games due to injury for lengths of time is unheard of. For him to win the World Series in 1957, Henry always told me that one of his great disappointments was the fact that they could have won again in 1958, and they had a 3-1 lead against the Yankees and then lost 3 games in a row and didn't win the series, and always said that people forget about the Milwaukee Braves as one of the greatest teams of all time because they only won 1 World Series. And that is, it's amazing that he could still go back and think about those sort of that memory. I was like, that was a long time ago, right? But I still remembered all of those details. The first ballot Hall of Famer in 1982 went in with Frank Robinson, and once again, there's really my favorite Henry Aaron story was about when his goal when he got into the big leagues in 1954 was to break Stan Musial's all-time hits record of 3,360. And as the Braves became a great team, he was a member of that great team. As the team began to decline, he was the leader of that team. and he realized that the team needed more and more offense, so he started to hit home runs. And I remember talking to him one day, and I said, so you were so good that you could decide which all-time record you were going to go after? So you just decided to shift from all-time hits to Babe Ruth's record? It's just an incredible, just the ability to do what he did, the way he did. There just really aren't a whole lot of words, because when you go look at his records, it's just unheard of.
You know, Howard, if you know, Richard touched on the alternative housing. I guess that was a polite way of talking about the racism here and all over the country. But Howard, if you could just touch upon some of the challenges that Hank, played through, not the physical, but the emotional of the racism in the league and in the country at the time.
Sure. Well, let's not forget when Henry came in, we always, and rightfully, and he talked about Jackie Robinson immensely, obviously the effect that Jackie Robinson had on him and on the country. But in so many ways, one of the arguments that I make in the book is that Henry had it even more difficult than Jackie in some ways, because Jackie had protection when he came into the big leagues, and when he was signed in 1945 and was in the minors in 46 and then came up in 47. The New York press paid very close attention to what Jackie was dealing with. The Dodgers made sure that he wasn't in as many disadvantageous or hostile environments as they could. They trained in Cuba. Then when he was in the minor leagues, he was in Montreal, and they found different ways to sort of keep him from the worst of the worst. But when Henry came up, he played in the Sally League, in the old South Atlantic League, and he had no protection. He integrated that league. He's one of the first Black players to play in that league. And I remember there was, he told me a story one time about he and Felix Mantilla being on the bench. I know he played in Jacksonville, and they were in one of these cities. I don't remember which town they were playing in. And the crowd was chanting alligator bait. And Felix Mantilla, his teammate, looked at Henry from Puerto Rico, and he looked at one of the guys on the bench, and he said, "Alligator bait, what's that?" And one of the white players looked at him and said, "You."
Oh.
And so this is the hostility that Henry went through. And this is you look at it this way, and then also the one thing I really enjoyed about interviewing him is that by the time, and talking to him, is by the time we're now in the millennium, and by the time it's 2012, 2013 or whatever, we all want to soften those edges. And Henry, in his way, never softened those edges. I remember talking to him about asking about the time that some of his teammates, now that it's all said and done, and how many people, apologized. And he would say, there are a lot of people that didn't apologize. My own teammates didn't apologize to me. They may say that on the air, but those days were exactly what they sound like. And the way that he could tell you that, it wasn't with revenge on his mind. He was simply telling you the facts of his life. And that to me was incredibly important, because we all want to make it seem like it was history and that people change. He told me a story once about, he was in the bathroom in Bradenton, and two of his teammates, one of them, Joe Adcock, the old first baseman, and one of I think it was Johnny Logan, they were sitting there talking, and they're just talking, N-word this, N-word that, going back and forth and the whole thing. And they hear the toilet flush, and Henry comes out of the stall, and they both look at him, and then they just kept on talking. And these are your teammates. And so this is the environment that you were expected to succeed in. And he succeeded at the highest possible level, knowing that hostility was all around him. And it's just, it brings tears to your eyes thinking about the level of concentration. And then when people also say, and I'll stop so everyone else can talk, the level of concentration it took to produce that. And then also when we talk about it, we speak about it so much is to say what he went through. We always say that, what he went through. And when I hear that, I always correct people, and I say, no, it's what you did to him, not what he went through. He didn't have to go through any of this. This is the environment that he was subjected to and still was able to produce at a genius, world-class, all-time level. And it's just remarkable to me.
Howard, thank you for sharing that. You know, most people know when they hear of Hank Aaron, they think of his, obviously, as you say, his Herculean top baseball career. Top, I always say he was the top home run hitter that didn't have an asterisk next to his name. And right, but I know that Dan Calloway, who has done so much with the youth of this community, uh, sees Hank in a different way also, not just his baseball greatness, but his humanitarianism and his work, especially with children, him and Billy with their charity. Daniel, tell us what Hank Aaron means to you and to our community.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. And go back to Washington and make sure you throw your name in the hat to be the commissioner of baseball. One of the things that stands out in Richard Rouse there, he was a little leaguer out there in Riviera. His mother would bring him out there every day to play at the Tate Gym. And 28 years ago, they renamed it to an old man with white hair, Dan Calloway Gym. We had to have professional people to come in there and give clinics to all different sports. Like in basketball, Laverne Tott would come in from the NBA, and Hank Aaron and Ralph Gar and Rico Cardi and Orlando Cepeda and those guys, when they came to spring training, I would have them to come out and give a clinic to all phases of baseball, because I wanted the kids to learn the fundamentals of the game, and on the side be learning the fundamentals of life. And they never asked for a penny, never asked for anything. They always asked, what can I do? And echo what Richard said, that they lived in the Black community. It was segregated. Although Ernie Johnson Sr., Ernie Johnson Jr. is on the TNT network right now. His father was a pitcher, and he was the only white would come out with them to teach the fundamentals of pitching. I think that with a star like Henry Aaron in our area, everybody just was glad to see him. And because he was so laid back, you would never know he was a star. He could open that over a lot of the kids' head and tell them to be like him, be like this individual, and you may reach that position in life. And when you got kids coming out of, especially out of Riviera, when we didn't even, at the time being in the 60s and the 70s, of course, it was still segregated. And we went to all segregated school. Now, I'm not complaining about going to segregated school, because we had great teachers, tremendous teachers, and we had great coaches, because Richard is here is the grandson of the man that taught 75% of the people in the Black community in Riviera and West Palm Beach, Richard Brooks. That's his grandfather. And Hank Aaron and all those guys, they just spend time just telling stories about this, that, and the other, and how they started in the Negro League. And I was one of those people who played in the Negro League. I think that we need to have more of these shows like this here, telling the story, number one. And I think that we need to go and empower the community to go back to RBI, which stands for Revitalizing Baseball Inner City, because Black kids don't play baseball much, because they're into the basketball program, which is great. They travel all over the world with AAU, but we need to have baseball. Baseball and golf teach you, you got to be fundamentally strong to play the game, and mentally tough, because nobody can catch the ball for you. Nobody can hit the ball for you. Nobody can run the ball for you. See, when team sports, it's a team sport, but it's an individual performance. And so if you remember now, when he hit 715, running around the base, it was a little Black lady running out there on that field. That was his mother. And then was the question, what is she doing on the field? She was trying to protect her son because all those letters have threatened his life if he breaks Babe Ruth. Now that is history, and I'm quite sure Mr. Bryant knows that. I think that the elected officials, and you've been great even when you were the mayor, we got to go and mandate, like when Bobby Brooks was the mayor of Riviera and Boone Dodd was our chief. We brought in Muhammad Ali. That was one of the greatest moments that ever happened in Riviera, because when I put the program on in the gym, we had 5,000 people in there. See, we are still hero worshipers, and we need that to get our mind off all this, insurrection and racism and just in the pandemic. We got to have something good to make us feel good. And athletes make us feel good because they are performers. Every time they see LeBron James on TV or something like that, Tom Brady winning another Super Bowl, we are hero worshipers. That's what we need. But Hank Aaron and the guys set the tone for what we do right now in Riviera.
Thank you so much, Ed. So I'm going to get to you next, George, but I want to just say that we've been joined by the assistant city manager of Riviera Beach, Deidre Jacobs, and my mayor of West Palm Beach, Keith James, and I'm going to get to you guys in a moment. Thank you, both of you, for joining us today. George, I'm going to go to you now. You're the executive director of Palm Beach Sports Commission, and you had the honor of inducting Hank into our Palm Beach County Hall of Fame. Tell us, I guess it wasn't too difficult a decision, but tell us about that.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I'm honored to be here with you today to talk about one of the greatest, if not the greatest athlete to play sports and his impact both on and off the field. And to be here and to hear Howard and Richard and Dan Calloway, it's, I don't even feel like, be worthy to talk about Hank Aaron and to follow those stories. But I've been at the Sports Commission now for 18 years, and our mission is to develop tourism through sports, but strong community initiatives. And we own and operate and produce the Palm Beach County Sports Hall of Fame. And our chairman at the time was Coach Joe Ciravolo, and he knew Mr. Aaron, and he for a long time says we have to induct Mr. Aaron into our Hall of Fame. But at that time, we wanted to make sure, and there was dialogue, is we really wanted Hank Aaron to be at our local celebration, to be there for it. So it was a lot of strategy about when can it happen. And my first year as executive director was 2010. And so that was the year that I remember Coach saying, I think we have our best chance. I've talked to him, I've talked to some contacts that he would be able to participate in our Hall of Fame. And so at that moment, once he was nominated, of course, he was the biggest name and was an overwhelming, I think every potential vote he received. And here we are, we're talking about one of the greatest athletes of all time. We're talking about a member of baseball's Hall of Fame and someone has won more awards and more recognition than you have time to discuss. And this, to me, signals his love and affection for Palm Beach County. So Coach Ciravolo had worked and notified Mr. Aaron and said, I feel good that he's going to be able to come. But at the time, he was a vice president for the Atlanta Braves, and our celebration was in March. And that's when Major League Baseball spring training is taking place. And so Mr. Aaron did have an obligation to help oversee the Atlanta Braves and conducting spring training in Orlando at that time. And so our office, we were working with his secretary, his representatives at the Braves, and we were like, I remember we would call every week, I think every Monday, saying any status, or can we confirm? And there They're like, we're trying, but you have to understand there's spring training. We know this as the spring training capital of Florida. The Braves have a game almost every other day. So we were hoping the schedule would fall right. Unfortunately, there was a game. When the schedule came out, there was a game on the day of our celebration. However, I remember getting a call on a Thursday because we at that point said, well, at least we want to send cameras up so we can ask Mr. Aaron to say a few remarks and to talk about his time and what he thinks of Palm Beach County and what the Hall of Fame would mean to him. And I remember we got a call, I think it was at 4:30 on a Thursday, and he said, listen, Mr. Aaron doesn't want you to just send cameras. He will come up, he will meet with you. You can film him in Palm Beach County, and he'll do whatever he can to support the Hall of Fame. So, and he'll be at his home tomorrow at 9 a.m. This was at the end of the day of Thursday, and I was like, all right, we're not gonna miss this opportunity. So we called our production crew.
So George, why don't you tell what happened? You got to his home and tell us what happened.
We got to his home. He had a 1 o'clock game. He had a 1 o'clock game that day. He made a trip just in the morning to come to see us, to accept this Hall of Fame, to his induction to this Hall of Fame. He welcomed us like he'd known us forever. I was days on in the job. He was so kind, so grateful. And when people ask me what was my 18 years at the Sports Commission, what is the best experience I've had in our sports scene, all the events that we've been involved with, all the events that we've hosted here, it was that moment to meet Hank Aaron. And within that 1 hour of time that he spent with us, he acted like he knew me forever. He talked about this county with such great love. He talked about his time in Bradenton and how it compared to Palm Beach County and how he enjoyed playing baseball in Palm Beach County and how he feel this was a big part of his home. And he offered, what can I do to help the Hall of Fame? If I could, if there's anything we can do to help from an auction standpoint, from fundraising, he offered his help. And he was so sincere in his love for Palm Beach County. And then after we were done, he had to get back for a 1 o'clock game. I couldn't believe the effort that he made for our Hall of Fame to come here, a legend of sports, to come here to really show his affection for this county, and then had to get back for a 1 o'clock game because his obligation was with the Atlanta Braves at that time in 2010. And they had a game that day. And I think that's just a small story, but it shows you how the person he is. It shows you what I think this county did mean to him.
George, you know what else it shows? It also shows what the excitement that's still in your voice from meeting this man. I really highlights the admiration and the love that so many people had for Hank.
I don't get starstruck but walking into his home, and seeing the generosity, I was in awe. I was speechless. I remember we did this film. We took a photo. I have the photo right behind me, and I remember he kind of put his arm around me, and I felt like a kid on Christmas. I'm like, he made me feel so special, and he made our Hall of Fame feel so special. And he was so authentic about it, and his love for Palm Beach County, I'll never forget it. It's been the highlight of my career at the Sports Commission.
Oh, okay. That's 18 years. And thank you very much. I've seen Deidre. Deidre, I want to do a shout out to you. Deidre, who is the assistant city manager now in Riviera Beach. When I was mayor, she helped me with the revitalization of Coleman Park. Deidre, why don't you just tell us some of the things we did there? And I know you had an encounter with the Aarons too. Tell us about that.
So, good morning, Mrs. Frankel again, and to everybody else that's a part of this Zoom conversation. I met Mr. Aaron as a result of Mrs. Frankel desiring to revitalize Coleman Park, which is one of the older Black communities in the city of West Palm Beach. And if I would say, I've worked with the city of West Palm for 22 years. Out of all of the projects that I've worked on, that was the most that meant, that caused me to have just an extremely, I would say, profound and exciting experience there with the city of West Palm, and primarily because it's so memorable because of the many different things that we did over at Coleman Park. So I really appreciated that opportunity. And as a part of that opportunity, I was able to establish relationships with not only Mr. Aaron, but Mrs. Aaron as well. And still to the day, we talk on a regular basis. I just talked to her a couple of days ago. We stay in touch. We became personal friends. While we were there at Coleman Park, Mr. Aaron, he had a burning desire to make a difference in Coleman Park. And it was primarily because that was the park where he actually had to go and practice at. We even installed baseballs over at memorable baseballs over at the park. And I'm sure they're still there. I haven't been over there in about 8 or so years, but there are probably still landmarks there, wherein his name and and names of other persons that performed or were actually active in different activities that made a difference in Coleman Park, where the baseballs are still there. And I remember, I think Mr. Calloway was a part of that particular activity as well when we had the baseballs installed. But because of Mr. Aaron's love for Coleman Park, his desire to do well by the residents in Coleman Park, they put on a golf tournament where we raised in one day $10,000 to benefit those children that live over in the Coleman Park neighborhood. And all of the money went toward providing them with different activities that they otherwise probably would not have had an opportunity to partake in. And we work with the Boys and Girls Club to help us to put those monies, to set those monies aside and to put activities in place for those children. And that really was because of Mr. Aaron and his desire to provide some type of foundation for Coleman Park and the children that live in that area. And because of his efforts to start that particular initiative, we put so many different social and human service programs in place. We started a senior program, and I think that program still exists there. It was called Smart Cats. We started a job training program there for many of the residents who were not able to attain jobs. We actually work with Palm Beach State College, and they started a construction program, and all of the various disciplines that related to construction. Persons that live in Coleman Park were given priority in order to partake in different private initiatives, but we also went as far as hiring them at the city. They became city employees to work with us in Coleman Park. We even worked with the Jewish Federation to create an ambassador program where we were actually able to train residents that live over in Coleman Park to become ambassadors of the community and work with other persons in the community to become engaged in those programs. We had thought about trying to figure out how we could even have a hospital there where we could work with the residents that had an interest in the medical field to start them with training opportunities. But all of it was a result of Mr. Aaron and Mrs. Aaron desiring to come to Coleman Park to lay a foundation for the residents that live there in order to make their lives better. They had even agreed to start a program where foundation would be incorporated, and they agreed to donate $50,000 just to get the program started for our families over in Coleman Park. So on the day, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, because I wanted to ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We did, because I remember you were involved with this. I remember that we also built dozens of homes, and we fixed up dozens of homes in Coleman Park. But what I really want to ask you about, because Billy has been listening to this today, and you know, all our hearts go out to her, and you know her. If you could tell the folks about the Billy and Hank's charity work with children, because it was not just here, but it was in other parts of our country. Can you just tell people about that?
Yes, ma'am. From my understanding, Mrs. Aaron, she shared with me how the Aarons brought about scholarship opportunities for children that otherwise would have not been able to go away to college and be able to partake in just realizing a higher education. So I know that they were instrumental in providing scholarships for children as a part of a nonprofit that I believe still exists in Atlanta.
So, yeah, just I'm sorry, not to interrupt you, Deidre, but what I remember is scholarships, not your ordinary scholarship to for tuition, but scholarships for children who had special talents.
Yes,
So it
ma'am.
could be piano lessons or tennis lessons or golf lessons. They wanted to give disadvantaged children an opportunity to really shine. And
Yes,
so we're
ma'am.
very
For
grateful
those
for that.
areas that a lot of times our children are not really engaged in the various art programs that exist for whatever reason. Mr. and Mrs. Aaron were instrumental in making sure that the children in the Coleman Park neighborhood actually had access to arts programs. So yes, that is accurate.
Hey, Deidre, thank you. And thank you for all that you did for us when you were back in West Palm Beach, which turns me to my mayor. Thank you, Mayor. You've been listening very closely to all this. And tell us what it means to you. First of all, Billy is still part of our community. We hope she's going to still spend some time here back in West Palm Beach. But tell us what it's meant to our city to have the Aarons as part of our life.
Well, thank you, Lois, for this opportunity. And I did not have the pleasure of meeting Hank Aaron in person. I don't have any stories personally, but that does not mean that he did not impact my life personally. As former Commissioner Ross said, his life was very large. And so as I think about the barriers that he had to break through in the Jim Crow South, barriers of racism, of segregation, but yet achieving levels of performance in his field that were unprecedented. That in and of itself is a life lesson. And so those actions actually paved the way for folks outside of sports to achieve and strive to be as great as they could be. And so when I think about pioneers, African-American pioneers, whether it's in business, entertainment, or even politics, we all stand on the shoulders of folks like Hank Aaron and others who, when times were not as friendly, and when the audiences were not as welcoming to people who look like me, they still persevered and achieved. And that's a life lesson. And as I go about my business as the mayor of this very, very fine city, I'm inspired by the stories of his achievement in a very different time. So that's the lesson that I take from this. Very proud to be mayor of the city, and I've heard the stories as Deidre just shared from others of what his he and Billy's charitable contributions were to this city, and the city is certainly much better because of his life and his generosity, and I'm hoping that, as you said, Billy will continue to be a resident of West Palm Beach.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, I want to say thank you to everybody who's participated today. Again, another shout out, obviously, to Billy. We love you. We're thinking about you and your family. What we shared today, though, is that Hank Aaron was more than just a phenomenal baseball player. We know that. He was a philanthropist, a fighter for racial justice, and he taught us a lot about perseverance and lots of life lessons, as we heard today. So as we end up, I'm going to go back to each of you. I'm going to give you a test here. If you could pick 2 or 3 words to describe Hank Aaron as you think back at him. So let's see, Howard, I'm going to give you the first test. What comes to your mind if you had to describe him?
Well, generous and incredibly kind and remarkable. I don't know if those 3 are good enough, but those are the 3 that come to mind. And while everyone was talking and while Mary was talking about just concentration, I was remembering how he would just always talk about being, the reason why I'm here is to use what I have to help other people. And that's really what I'm hearing today as well. And it's so consistent that you know it's true.
George, what are your, give us 2 or 3 words. What do you remember?
Trailblazer, legend, and kind, extremely kind.
Dan.
God-fearing, and he was a humble man, and he was always willing to help others.
Who? Richard Riles. What? Give us a couple of words. What do you remember?
Let's see. That's a couple words is probably inadequate, but I guess the best description of him would be powerful and impactful.
Deidre?
I would characterize not only Mr. Aaron, but Mrs. Aaron as well, as blessings. They're humble persons and just extremely kind. And Mrs. Aaron, I don't see where you're on here, but if you are and you can hear me.
She's listening.
Oh, she is. Just please know that I really do love you and I miss y'all.
That's very kind. All right. Well, I think we got some generous, kind, remarkable, trailblazer, legend, humble, willing to help, powerful, impactful, a blessing. Yes, he was. He is a blessing, not just to our community, but really to the world. And we are very grateful that Hank and Billy Aaron has touched our lives. And with that, I wish everybody, I thank you all for being us again to help us to celebrate Hank Aaron, his life and his greatness. Thank you, everybody.
Congresswoman, we do have some press on the call if we want to see.
Oh, okay. We'll see if the press, maybe the press wants to ask you all a question. Anybody have a question?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, everybody, don't forget your mask, social distance, wash your hands. Let's stay safe. We got to get the baseball season back, right? Take care, everybody.